They came to him with fake badges, wearing smug confidence, and certain they could take him down. But what they didn't know, the part they never even considered, was that the man standing in front of them wore a real badge. Subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. The moving truck had barely turned the corner when he noticed the stairs. At first, James Warren told himself he was imagining it. Just normal curiosity, the way people looked when someone new moved into their neighborhood. He'd done it himself once or twice. But then, when he stepped outside to check the mailbox, it became undeniable. Across the street, a woman watering her front lawn suddenly turned away, pretending she hadn't been watching. A jogger slowed just enough to give James a long, assessing glance before picking up his pace again. And a couple walking their golden retriever made no effort to return his polite nod. The air felt heavy, tense, like the quiet before a storm. Something was off. This wasn't what he'd signed up for. When he closed on the house 2 months ago, they told him this was an exclusive, well-maintained community. Quiet streets, friendly neighbors, a place where people looked out for one another. He'd worked too long and too hard for this to be anything less than a safe, peaceful home. His home. But standing on his front porch, James could already feel it, the invisible wall they were building around him. He tried to brush it off at first. Some people just kept to themselves. That was fine. He wasn't looking for neighborhood barbecues or block parties. Just a place where he could drink his coffee in peace and maybe take a jog without feeling watched. But the coldness was impossible to ignore. Conversation stopped when he walked past. People glanced at him, then looked away quickly. The mailman barely made eye contact. Neighbors crossed the street when he went out for his morning run. It wasn't long before the small, deliberate acts began. His trash cans went missing. He assumed at first it was a mistake by the waste management company. But when he walked the length of the street, he noticed his were the only ones gone. 3 days later, he found them dumped behind the wooded lot at the edge of the subdivision, half buried under leaves and debris. The message was clear. Then there was the car. A long, deep scratch down the driver's side of his black truck. Not a careless swipe, no. This was intentional. Someone had taken a key, or maybe a knife, and dragged it down the side, ruining the clean, polished finish. James ran his fingers over the gouge. His stomach tightened. No cameras on the street. No one saw a thing. Or at least, no one was admitting they had. He called the police, filed a report. He didn't expect much to come of it, and he was right. There wasn't much they could do. A few days later, an envelope appeared in his mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper printed in a stark, mechanical font. Some places aren't meant for everyone. You don't belong here. James read it twice. Slowly, his grip tightened around the paper. His heartbeat remained steady, but there was a fire building in his chest. He'd dealt with things like this before, but this was supposed to be different. This was supposed to be home. Then came the HOA. At first, it was small things. Letters about minor infractions. His fence was too high by 3 inches. His front door was the wrong shade of blue. His lawn, though trimmed, didn't meet their exacting standards. He'd seen worse yards. Much worse. But they weren't getting warning letters pinned to their doors. And then it got ridiculous. A letter arrived informing him that his truck, a sleek black F-150, was no longer allowed to be parked in his own driveway because it was disruptive to the uniform visual appeal of the neighborhood. Another letter claimed he was in violation for placing his trash cans on the curb incorrectly. James refused to be intimidated. He knew exactly what they were doing. They were testing him, seeing if he would push back, waiting to see if he would pack up and move. One morning, he stepped outside and found an orange traffic cone blocking his driveway. Attached was a laminated sign. Garage closed by order of the HOA. He stared at it. Across the street, his neighbor, Laura Bishop, stood on her porch, arms crossed, a smug little smile on her face. James calmly walked over, ripped the sign off the cone, and tossed it in the trash. Then he picked up the cone and set it on the sidewalk. But the next morning, it was back. And the morning after that, it became a game. Every day, he removed it. Every night, it reappeared. He tried to catch them in the act. Sat up by his window. Waited. But whoever it was, they were careful. Then it escalated. One day, James turned on the faucet to rinse his coffee mug. Nothing. He checked the kitchen, the bathroom, the laundry room. Nothing. He called the water company. Service to his house had been suspended at the request of the HOA. Unresolved compliance issues. That was the moment James realized they weren't just trying to harass him. They were trying to force him out. And it wasn't just the HOA. One afternoon, he returned from a store and found Greg Hunter, another neighbor, waiting at his driveway. You know, Greg said, rocking on his heels like he was having a casual chat, "A lot of people around here think you don't really fit in." James stared at him, silent. "Maybe it would be easier," Greg continued, "if you found a place where you do." James smiled, slow and deliberate. "Maybe some people should mind their own damn business." Greg's face twitched, but he walked away. That night, James realized they weren't going to stop. And he knew, with absolute certainty, they were planning their next move. He didn't have to wait long. The call came before sunrise. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. But he picked up. "James," said the voice. It was Tyler Evans, one of the few people in the neighborhood who had stayed neutral. "You need to get home. Now." James was already awake, adrenaline kicking in. "What's going on?" "Police are at your house. 2 cruisers. And guess who's talking to them like she runs the place?" James didn't need to guess. Laura Bishop. By the time he turned onto his street, his stomach was in knots. Sure enough, 2 patrol cars, lights flashing. And there was Laura, arms crossed, wearing her usual smugness like armor. James parked. Calm. Steady. The officers approached. Professional. Cautious. "Sir," one said, flipping open his notepad. "We received a report of suspicious activity involving a firearm at this residence." James exhaled slowly. "Let me guess," he said, glancing at Laura. "She made the call." Laura gasped, hand to chest, eyes wide in fake shock. "I only reported what I heard. People saw things, and I was concerned. I was just being a responsible neighbor." The officers shared a look. Exhausted. This wasn't their first HOA drama. "We'll log it as a false alarm," the younger cop said. Then he turned to Laura, his tone hardening. "But ma'am, false reports are a crime." For the first time, Laura looked nervous. She backed off. But James knew it wasn't over. Laura wasn't the type to give up. And she didn't. The next week, James woke to the sound of heavy equipment outside his house. A construction crew. Cones. Workers setting up like they were going to rip up his front yard. James walked outside. Calm. Controlled. "What's this?" he asked the foreman. "HOA repair order," the man said. "Leak in your water main." James arched a brow. "Let me guess. Laura Bishop signed off on it." The man checked his clipboard. "Yeah. President of the HOA." James sighed. "Pack it up. Sir, we've got work to do." James pulled out his badge. "Real. Federal." The man went pale. "All right, guys. Pack it up." Laura stormed over, furious. "You can't do this." "You don't have the authority to dig up my yard," James said. "Try it again, and I'll have you arrested." Laura's face turned crimson. She stormed back into her house. But it was only the beginning. A week later, he received a formal notice. Disciplinary review. The HOA was trying to expel him from the neighborhood. James laughed. They couldn't kick him out. They didn't own his house. But Laura wasn't after legality. She was after chaos. The whispers in the neighborhood grew louder. Neighbors who had once ignored him now crossed the street to avoid him. An older woman, Janet Fields, cornered him at the grocery store. "You know," she said, "a lot of people think you should just move." James smiled. Maybe they should worry about themselves. The HOA meeting that Friday was a spectacle. Laura in the center, smug as ever. She listed his infractions: disruptive behavior, obstructing community maintenance, hostility. James let her talk. And then, when she finished, he stood. "You done?" Laura faltered. "You don't belong here," she spat. "I'm not going anywhere," James replied. And that was the beginning of her downfall. 1 week later, county officials arrived. Complaints of structural issues, plumbing violations, pest infestation. The inspectors found nothing. And James filed a formal complaint against Laura and the HOA. What followed was chaos. An investigation. An audit. Thousands missing from HOA funds. Fraudulent fees. Fabricated violations. Laura's allies abandoned her. And when the county officials finished, they called the police. Laura was arrested. Fraud. Embezzlement. Handcuffed in front of the entire neighborhood. Her reign was over. The HOA was restructured. The bogus fines were wiped clean. The absurd rules revoked. Neighbors who had once avoided James now waved hello. Some even apologized. He didn't care about apologies. He cared about peace. Laura's house went up for sale. And one evening, as James walked down the street, he realized this was home now. Truly home. And no one could take it from him again.